This is Lauren Laughs, a podcast dedicated to Olympus and Greek mythology. In this episode, we're discussing the chapter 176 titled Delivery Boy, Open Plots and Cookies, and an assortment of myths of Hermes. Find us on SoundCloud as Lauren Laughs Podcast and YouTube under Lauren Laughs. I'm Greg, also known as King Pluto 97.
And I'm Sarah, also known as Hekate.
We start with Hermes giving his testimony, and he looks mischievous. Hermes prefaces his testimony by saying he has lots of jobs, but only cares about two things: his mother Maya and making money. And an annoying Apollo, he adds. He explains that Maya is not a goddess, and he wants her to have a good life because she's a beautiful lady who deserves nice things. We wonder if this is where Hades got it from when he gave Persephone a salary, though she's an intern. Zeus slips up, saying that while he agrees with Hermes and thinks that Maya is a classy lady with a deep bosom, which makes Hermes freeze for a second. It could be a nod to Zeus being his father, like in mythology.
Zeus recovers, and Hermes begins to tell the court that his job as messenger of the gods allows him to see everything. He discovered that Demeter had a daughter on a job in the mortal realm, and due to the fact that he smells like dead souls, he gets worried that if he were to bump into others like Aphrodite, who is quite literally the goddess of self-love, it would make him look awful. So he jumps into a lake on Demeter's property and begins to relax, even though a pink nymph, who is really Persephone, is watching him. She's surprised to see him, saying that Demeter is quite strict with gods sticking around for long. Hermes agrees, and Persephone tells him that it's because of her. Embarrassed, Hermes makes a joke of the situation and sees that Persephone is very convincing. He ends up bringing her things as an excuse for her to be friends with him. Demeter catches him out, as he does this one time, and as he makes some excuse about Athena's encyclopedia collection and who he could give it to. Shrewdly, Demeter half asks, half demands if he's seen her daughter. So you saw Kore, huh?
Next is the cookie theory segment. Persephone seemed to be very confident around Hermes, despite the fact that he was naked in the lake with her. Was that part of her duality as a fertility goddess giving her confidence?
Okay. So I tend to think yes, that part of her being a fertility goddess, comes with that certain level of confidence. It's kind of, what would you describe it?
I mean, it's the way that she looked when, at first she was all, coy and shy, and then she approached him and she realized that, she could get anything she wanted, and he was like, oh, I'm sorry, I've got my terms and conditions hanging out, and she's like, oh, I've never seen a god like this, even when she's at Hermes and, she ends up, tracing her finger along Hades' shirt back, she's like, why did I let my horniness give me a false sense of confidence? But I think her being a fertility goddess, that's always, part of her powers. That's always going to be giving her confidence and, an intuition, almost, that she's doing what she should be doing.
Yeah.
I think that the only reason why she feels less confident when she met Hades again at Hermes is because, Demeter's kind of tried to discourage her, and, you're not a fertility goddess, and you're joining the goddesses of eternal maidenhood. But before, I think she hadn't joined the goddesses of eternal maidenhood, and she was still living on Demeter's lands.
I tend to wonder if maybe it's also a instinctual thing, kind of Oh, what's a good example? Like, cats instinctively wanting to crawl into, like, smaller spaces and that sort of thing. They do that because part of it is them trying to hide from predators, and part of it is because their prey is usually in smaller spaces.
That's why Persephone's so
and I'm wondering
cunning,
if maybe part of it
that,
is
like, she just gives Hermes this look, and he's like, "What do you want?" Like, he immediately knows that the way that she looked at him means that she wants something.
Right.
And that's how they became friends, because she basically manipulated him. But I think, a fertility goddess and a trickster god, they're going to be sort of on the same wavelength, and they'll know kind of what each other need as well. And, in the mythology, Hermes is technically, like, half fertility god or something like that, so it's kind of, like, not... I don't know if it's canon in Olympus, but, like, that could be another part of it that, if they're on the same wavelength in terms of powers, then it was obvious that they were going to understand each other and get along well from the beginning, almost.
Yeah. So...
mentioned was, wondered if Hermes could be part of the sons who could possibly overthrow Zeus, since, in theory, he's one of Zeus's sons. The other thing we wanted to mention is if Hermes is already an Olympian, could he bargain, like, what could he potentially bargain Zeus for?
I mean, like, he does say that the only thing he cares about is money and his mother, and since, like, Demeter's been paying him for... It must be at least a year, because Persephone, when she gets to the underworld, she has her 20th birthday, and, like, her birthday is, like, the first day of spring. So I'm guessing there was, like, a couple months before that, before she had her act of wrath, and then after, which means that it was almost a year of Hermes being paid to hide souls from Hades. So that means that if, he's got enough money, and he already works for Hades and Zeus and Poseidon and basically whoever needs deliveries being done, and he's got multiple jobs as well, so I don't really think he needs money, but he did say that he cares about his mother an awful lot, so maybe, he's gonna blackmail Zeus into giving her immortality, because he said that, she's not a goddess, but he cares about her very much. He wants to make sure she's taken care of. Maybe if he could bargain to Zeus and make the Zeus gives her, like, immortality, then he'd make sure that she'd always be safe.
Yeah, I agree. I wondered, one of the questions I wondered about, and this was the first one, was whether or not he could possibly overthrow Zeus. First off, if he would, just as a side note, whether or not he would want to.
All of the people that Hekate listed, barring Apollo in the previous episode, was Hephaestus really doesn't care. He hates Olympus. Like, Ares is kind of, like, bloodthirsty and kind of, he would get bored and it's not really his thing. And then, like, obviously, like, Hebe doesn't count because she's, like, a goddess. The only person that could really care about his throne is Apollo, but I don't know if Zeus knows that Apollo and Artemis are his children, or maybe he does, because, we saw how much he sweat when Apollo turned up, and he was like, "Oh, Mum says hi."
Yeah.
Because he obviously has some history with Leto. And whenever Zeus has history with a goddess, it's always because he slept with them.
And part of that was why she was exiled from Olympus, right? Why Hera exiled her from Olympus was because she had a...
all the love gods have like a vendetta with Zeus, because he was like, oh, I slept with Leto because all the love gods kind of forced me to do it. It's their powers, not me. And like, so that's why Hera hates Eros and she hates Aphrodite, even though Ares loves Aphrodite and like has children with her. Like, Hera has that vendetta against love gods in general because of Zeus and his infidelity. But I just think it's kind of weird because we know from like when did he mention it? I think there was I think it was either Hades or somebody like that mentioned that, you know, to Persephone, oh, don't think about Zeus and Hera's relationship, it'll give you a headache. And like, even back then when they went to the club and they started bullying Hades about like Persephone, and then Hera turned up, you know, like, Zeus is very sort of, he's very loud and he's always like saying sexist and rude stuff, but like, he never really gets pulled up on it. Like, the only person that's ever pulled someone up for making kind of crass comments is when, you know, Hades pulls out the eyeball of that guy, and then, like Hekate gets cross at him because that's gonna affect her for the rest of her immortal life because she's only 19 at the time. And it still keeps into effect that, you know, anything a god does to a goddess is automatically her fault rather than his.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, kind of like our own society, really. It's not any different just because they're gods.
Yeah.
Although everyone seems to think that Maia's amazing, which is kind of interesting because we don't really have many mother figures in Lower Olympus that aren't really problematic. I mean, obviously we don't know much about Maia yet, but Demeter is very, like, she wants to protect, but she ends up being like verbally manipulative, and Hera's kind of a drunk who just kind of lets her husband get away with everything because he's king of the gods and she can't do anything.
Yeah.
And then Metis got eaten by Zeus, obviously, during the Titanomachy War. We don't know about Rhea, whether she's missing. Like in the myths, she just sort of, she still exists, but she roams the earth, trying to get away from Kronos, who was, like, cursed to roam the earth. And then he was locked up in Tartarus.
What about Aphrodite?
Aphrodite is a good parent.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it depends, because, you know, she's not married to anyone. And, like, apart from in the myths, like, she's supposed to be married to Hephaestus. But in Elo, we see that Hera's got her book of suitors, and, you know, she's got Hephaestus down there. She's got Ares down there. Yeah. So it's obvious that both Hephaestus and Ares are not married, and it's just Ares lives with Aphrodite and the children.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we're moving into the discussion section. So here we talk about, has Zeus really dropped himself in a golden cow path? Basically implying that he's slept with Maia.
What do you think?
I mean, Zeus kind of does, like, all of these cheesy comments. Like, the first time he was, like, teasing Hades about Persephone, he was like, how would you even have sex? You know, she's tiny. And, like, he was sort of goading Hades into, like, telling him and being, like, generally disgusting. And I think, didn't he, like, get in trouble with the strip club in the beginning because he, like, pinched a server's butt or something? Like, we get the point that he's, like, just kind of sleazy and disgusting. you know, that's kind of who he is. And even when he's like, you know, obviously in the wrong because Hera's kicked all three of them out, and like Hades is like, oh, okay, I guess you can come to my house and sleep on the sofa, and he's like feeling all sorry for himself, and he's like, oh no, don't worry, I'll just like sleep on the sofa, and like I like the glow of the TV, like you know, I love Hera, you know, I love her, right? And Hades is just like, okay, don't think about it right now, just go to sleep. It's not really solving Zeus's problem. He's just like, you know, they've probably had this discussion like a million times, and like whatever advice Hades or Poseidon give him doesn't seem to really
kind of goes through one ear and out the other, is what it seems like.
doesn't work.
Yeah. According to some myths, Hermes wasn't only a messenger of the gods, but also the inventor of speech. As such, he's often associated with oratory or interpretation. In Greece, an interpreter called themselves Hermionesis. Is that Neus? Hermioneus? Am I pronouncing that right?
I think so.
Yeah. In Greece, an interpreter is called a Hermenius, and today the science of interpretation is known as hermeneutics. Hermes was the only Olympian capable of crossing the boundary between the living and the dead and carrying the souls of the dead to Hades. In time, he came to be known as the conductor, or the leader of souls. People also called him the patron of travelers and thieves, the shepherd of men, trickster, and Argus slayer.
Zeus and Maia. Maia was the eldest of the 7 Pleiades, daughters of the Titan Atlas and the Oceanid Pleione. The nymphs were virgin attendants of Artemis, the goddess of hunt and the moon, and were renowned for their beauty. This attracted the attention of many male gods, and Maia, being the most beautiful of the Pleiades, was lusted after by none other than Zeus, king of the Olympians. According to the Homeric hymn to Hermes, Maia was a shy nymph who avoided the company of the gods. An intrigued Zeus came after her while his wife Hera slept, and took her by force in the cave of Mount Selene in Arcadia, where the nymph had hid herself. The event led to Maia becoming impregnated with Hermes, a child she delivered after the passing of 10 moon cycles in the same cave, which is about a month.
I do want to mention that we did already cover and the creation of the lyre and things like that. So these myths that we're focusing on are just myths that we haven't covered yet. So the next one is the guider of souls. Hermes, the messenger to the god, is also tasked with being a psychopomp, or conductor of souls. He thus guides the souls of the deceased to the underworld. With the help of Caduceus, the golden staff gifted to him by Apollo, Hermes shows the souls the way to the underworld, guiding them from the earth to the river Styx. Once they made it to the river, they were taken on a boat further into the underworld by the boatmaster Charon. To mention that we're more specifically you, but that we're wearing some kind of costume since it's Halloween tomorrow. So
well, I mean, like technically by time zones, it's like nearly. Well, I mean, for me in my time zone, it's 2:48 on the 31st of October. So I am dressed as Hades, but you're dressed as Hermes, aren't you?